Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming along today. And if you stood somewhere nearby and want to come in, there's plenty of seats. So please do come on in. My name's Jack. I work for a company called Samarkand Global. We are a e-commerce technology and distribution brand incubation business that's focused on China. We're based between here in London and Shanghai in China. And what I'm really going to talk to you about today is one of the most exciting parts of global e-commerce, which is social commerce in China, particularly around live streaming. There's some live streaming companies here today who are focused on kind of replicating what's already happened in China over the last 5 years over here in European and American markets. So I think kind of if you want to know what's going to happen in the future of e-commerce, possibly looking at what's happening in China now is a really good way of doing that. What gives me the right to tell you about that? As I say, we're focused on China. I've been working with China for 13 years. I used to live there, and have been involved in this for a little while. So I know a little bit, although hesitant to ever describe myself as an expert because it just gets you into trouble. So who are we? Who are Samarkand Global? We have been going since 2016, which isn't a super long time, but it's quite old in the scheme of cross-border e-commerce in China. And we're a listed company here in the UK on an exchange called the Aquis Exchange, but we're dual headquartered between London and Shanghai. So we've got a lot of staff who are focused on working with e-commerce platforms, working with influencers based out in Shanghai, and then we've got a lot of people who are focused on either the technology or working with brands and developing the brands that we've got here in the UK. We've got some really amazing partnerships with some of the key players in China's ecosystem. So Youzan are a WeChat-based kind of platform. They're like a Shopify for WeChat, essentially, where you can create stores within that ecosystem. SF Express are a huge global shipping company, but they're Chinese. They're one of our lead investors. Tmall, I'm sure you've all heard of. We've got a really good, strong partnership with them. And then Douyin is the bottom one, which is TikTok in China. And we were part of their technology build for their cross-border e-commerce. And we also sell a lot of products on there, which I'll be showing you shortly. So what are we going to talk about a little bit today? China's e-commerce market. I'm not going to go into like massive depth because you could talk about it for about 3 hours before you've covered it all. But then talking a little bit about what social commerce means in China, what channels is it, why is it relevant, why is it important, live streaming, how it works, why it works, and then also one of our brand partners, Temple Spa, who are a UK beauty business. Kind of 20-year-old beauty business that we've been working with them for a few years. They've had a really successful year on live streaming, so we're going to talk a bit about them, and then at the end talk about a couple of other channels as well. It's time to rethink China e-commerce. I start every presentation that I do about China basically with that every year because it's always time to rethink China e-commerce because it changes so rapidly. And one of the key trends over the last few years has been Alibaba's dominance in the market eroding slightly. So Alibaba's platforms include Taobao, which is a small business to consumer platform, and Tmall Global, which are their business to consumer platforms. Back even as recently as 2020, they were almost 50% of total e-commerce sales in China, which incidentally is 25%. That makes them 25% of global e-commerce sales because China is half of global e-commerce. So the biggest e-commerce company in the world, their market share in China is predicted to decline to about 40% by 2024 next year. So they've lost almost 10% market share in quite a short space of time. That's not because they're getting smaller, it's because everybody else is getting bigger much quicker than them. So you can see JD, who are probably the second most famous Chinese e-commerce company, they've kind of maintained a flat 16 to 18% over the last few years. And then the two kind of challengers, main challengers anyway, Pinduoduo, PDD, with the light blue bar, they're a super low price platform, very much about straight from factory or straight from farm to consumer a lot of the time. So not many international brands play there unless you're a mass market brand. You may have come across them a bit more recently in the UK with their international app, which is called Termu, which is being advertised absolutely everywhere. You can get some real bargains on there if you are willing to take a real gamble on whether it's going to be any good or not. And then Douyin, which is the Chinese name for TikTok, owned by ByteDance. It's a separate ecosystem, so the content doesn't overlap because of the different laws in e-commerce content and regulation, social media content and regulation. But there's been a huge push on Douyin to monetize the platform. So during the pandemic, start of the pandemic, this time here, they found that their average user was spending about 2 hours a day on the platform, and that was over 600 million people. So they were getting a lot of eyes on a lot of content. I'm too old for TikTok, I feel like, which I don't know what that says, but there's a lot of people watching a lot of content in China, and they really started to build live streaming in around 2021, and even in that early day, they managed to gain a 5% foothold in the market simply because of the established audiences that they had, and it's been growing and growing and growing. So total e-commerce sales are forecast to exceed $3 trillion by 2024, which is huge. And a lot of that growth isn't coming from traditional marketplace e-commerce where I'm a brand, I don't know, I'm Reese or whoever, right? Like Burberry, I've set up a store on a platform, I'm going to target consumers. There's still plenty of that going on, but the growth is coming from social commerce and other areas of the market. So as I said, what's driving that growth? Live streaming is one of the big things that's driving that growth. There's three main platforms that do live streaming in China. Douyin, as I've just mentioned, so TikTok. There's a competitor short video platform. In case your 2 hours a day on Douyin wasn't enough, you can also spend some time on Kuaishou watching similar videos. And then Alibaba have live streaming. They were the first to live streaming, really. Austin Lee, very, very famous live streamer in China. They were dominant for years, and Douyin and Kuaishou have kind of entered that space. Things that this means, so you can see huge growth between 2022 and 2023 in live streaming. That's actually more than 50% of the total growth of e-commerce is coming from growth in live streaming e-commerce. China was super famous previously for these huge shopping festivals. So, you know, we think Black Friday and Cyber Monday over here are big events. Absolutely nothing compared to what Double 11 has been in China, which is it's also called Singles Day. On the 11th of November, it's called that because it's 1111, right? So all the ones, they're all on their own. It was a huge e-commerce invention. 618 as well is the other one. That's the 18th of June, 618, which is the day that JD launched. So they had like an anniversary thing every year, which then just everybody else started doing. And it created this really lumpy e-commerce sales cycle where you ended up with huge sales at these festival times, but you also had huge competition, huge discounts, massive value being given away, and then enormous bottlenecks in things like logistics and everything else, right? And marketing cost a lot more at those times because everybody was really trying to get the key moment out of it. Something that live streaming has done is it's changed that into a kind of always-on value throughout the year, because part of the live streamer's proposition is, I've got these amazing products for you at this special price. A consumer isn't necessarily then going to be like, well, I'm not going to buy it today because it might be £1 cheaper in 3 months' time or $1 cheaper in 3 months' time, right? They're just going to buy it on that day. So it's kind of smoothed out the e-commerce cycle a little bit in the market. If you want to read a bit more about this, a little plug in the middle, we've got a report that we wrote last year on our website. We kind of call this trend towards differentiated e-commerce platforms, decentralized e-commerce. We think it's the new normal. We think it's part of what's going to fuel the next 5 years of growth in China e-commerce. It's available for free on our website. I spent a lot of time writing it, so I'd really appreciate it if you all went and downloaded it and read it as well. Just let people get their pictures. Great. So, going to talk through a few things that kind of underpin how you build a successful social commerce business in China. First, if you're a brand, you know you're doing super well in the UK maybe, you've got a few listings in stores, you're selling well on Amazon, you've got a couple of category-specific e-commerce listings as well. I don't know, you're on Cult Beauty or you're on Farfetch or something, depending on what you're selling. If that really doesn't have any impact in China. It's a completely separate ecosystem. Your 100,000 followers on Instagram in the UK, you can't even get on Instagram in China. They don't care, right? So, in order to generate desirability in sales, you have to be in front. You have to have eyes on your product, on your brand. There has to be some kind of explanation of who you are, why people should buy you, and some level of endorsement from people who already have authority in the market. That's one of the key things. It's why live streaming works. A recommendation from someone is a lot more powerful than yet another international brand coming into the market and saying, we've got the best products, why don't you buy from us? They're 3 times as expensive as local competitors, right? You're competing with Koreans, you're competing with American companies, all looking for the same eyes. So having endorsements from influencers in the market is super important. Chinese consumers consult 8 touch points before making a purchase decision on average. European customers require 4. So that really shows the importance of consistency and being out there. If somebody sees your product for the first time in a live stream, no matter how much money you've paid that live streamer, it doesn't really matter to the consumer, right? If it's the first time, they're going to want to look into you a little bit more first and make a purchase decision. So the thing that we do, we call it, everybody in China calls it, we didn't invent it, seeding. Planting seeds, they call it, quite often in China as well. Working with smaller influencers, larger influencers, some free posts, some paid posts, to create a body of content that's available on the Chinese internet, so that when people are searching for skincare or when they're searching for, cashmere or whatever it is that your category is, they can really find authentic endorsements of your products that position you alongside competitors, that position you as among the best in your category. It's quite often pay to play seeding. There's not really a free lunch anymore. Unfortunately, you can't just give people nice things and hope they post about them. But it's a really vital part of entering the Chinese market, and we've got some really great case studies as well about the search for brands increasing on e-commerce sites, the ROI as well, the GMV that's generated from it growing because of the seeding impact. So you've done some seeding. Chinese consumers are all commenting underneath all these amazing influencers posts, but where can I buy it? Where is it available? Here are some of the social commerce platforms that we sell on. I can't decide whether audience participation is valid. I might not be able to hear you, to be honest with you. It's quite loud in here. But I was going to ask people if they knew what the logos are. I feel like this one everybody knows because it's the same. But Douyin in China. And the one in the middle is relatively famous. WeChat, the big kind of WhatsApp equivalent in China, or WhatsApp is trying to emulate WeChat by adding in all of this new annoying stuff that WhatsApp is doing with channels and payments and all the rest of it. WeChat was there 15 years ago. You can book a flight, pay for your cleaner, pre-order your dinner, pay your utility bills, buy 10 things from your favorite 15 brands, right? All in one platform. It's all one big closed ecosystem. The second one is Kuaishou, so that's the other short video platform that I was just talking about that's a competitor to Douyin. That one's a little bit stronger in slightly less developed cities in China. So Douyin is super popular everywhere. Kuaishou has got more of a foothold outside of Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, which are kind of the top tier cities in China, and has a really strong customer base across lower tier cities. And that can actually be a really good way of engaging with consumers who don't have access to international products, like on shelves in their home city. Maybe they're from a relatively small Chinese city of between 1 and 4 million people, and they don't have all access to all the international brands like you do in Shanghai. So actually there's more of a captive audience if you can find the right person to connect with them. And then there's Xiaohongshu, or Little Red Book there, which is started out as a really cool influencer travel blog kind of website. It looks most like Instagram out of any of them. It's where particularly young women, about 70% of the users on that platform are women, go to look for beauty tips, fashion advice, travel tips, kind of lifestyle products as well. It's a really, really nice kind of premium platform for that. And then at the end you've got Taobao, which is the Alibaba e-commerce gateway, essentially. Every Chinese person with access to the internet has bought something on Taobao, I would imagine, right? It is that level of ubiquitous. And in the way that we use Google in the UK to mean search for something, so it's kind of just entered language as a verb, Taobao in China has entered language to mean to shop for something online. That's kind of the level of recognition it's got. So, just to talk a little bit about live streaming on Douyin and Kuaishou, we've got our own store on there. So I mentioned we were part of we've got technology that powers a lot of this stuff as well, but we do run our own store where we sell products. We're specialists in beauty and health categories. That's where we sit. The way that it works, so you get very few sales on these platforms just by having your listings on your store. Nobody's kind of opening the platform to look for an e-commerce store to then buy something. The way that they're discovering you is because they're already following an influencer who's doing a live stream. They've probably booked in that they're going to watch them at this time, or algorithmically, the feed on Douyin or Kuaishou show you about one live stream for every 5 videos that you're scrolling through. And so they're talking about it here. So this woman here is talking about like a spray, like a hydrating spray that you can use. She'll probably talk about it for 5 or 10 minutes, and then the link goes live at the end when she's finished explaining it. So she tries to build up demand, explain the product, and then create a rush for everybody to then check out on your store. The transaction happens on your store. You pay a commission to the live streamer. So things to consider. If you're an international company, non-Chinese, I mean, you can't do it alone. You have to have a registered Douyin partner who's able to do it for you, or an entity in China. You could then, in theory, do it yourself, but you probably still want to use a partner. You need to find live streamers who fit with you. There's some like huge live streamers. The biggest guy on Douyin, he was a kind of stand-up comedian in China. He's a slightly bigger guy, a bit older. He's a bit brash. You're not going to put luxury beauty products with him and expect them to sell. He can sell huge amounts of other things, but he's not a good fit for all brands, right? Live streamers. Chinese live streamers are the best paid people in the world, I think. They get anywhere between 25 and 45% commission on every sale. So it's a cash-hungry model in terms of that. So you've got to have your cogs well down for it to be a viable option, and you've got to be able to have a partner who can negotiate. Maybe have relationships with live streamers already, where they're selling multiple brands, so they pay a lower commission, that kind of stuff. But there is quite a high threshold there. Love New Order. Wish it wasn't happening right now. Stock preparation and planning is tough. It's very lumpy sales, right? So I was saying it's smoothed out the overall sales throughout the year, but a live streamer will sell a lot of units in a 2-minute, 10-minute period. It's not just the case of 5 sales a day and it growing incrementally. It's no sales for a week and then 1,000 sales on Saturday, right? That means that you've really got to be prepared. You've got to have stock depth. We use a hero product strategy at Samarkand as well for our brands, because you've got to find a way of mitigating the risk of taking thousands of units of stock. You're not going to do that across 20 different SKUs, because then you're just super exposed if one of them doesn't do very well and you're sat with something that nobody wants to sell. So you need to get behind 1 to 3 products and push them really, really hard a lot of the time. And then pricing structures need to be agreed well in advance. Live streamers will always try and sell something for the lowest price they possibly can, because they want to give the best deal to their customers. So you've got to make sure that that is super well articulated in advance of doing it. So here's 2 different live streams. First one I'm going to show you a little bit of is on Douyin, the TikTok equivalent. Second one is Tmall, China's most famous live streamer, Austin Lee. These are both live streams that we've done this year with Temple Spa. And this one on the left, this isn't anybody particularly famous. That's our in-house live streamer at Samarkand. So it's not huge numbers, but it's just demonstrative of how it works. So you can see, and you can probably hear in your headphones as well, but I can't, that she is explaining the product. She talks about the types of ingredients that are in it. She talks about the history of the brand. She provides all kinds of information, personal experience, as well as factual information, why she loves the product. You can see how many people are watching up in the top corner there. So there's only 19 people watching on this one, but the average dwell time on a live stream on Douyin is about 3 minutes. So you're constantly refreshing your audience, and live streams last anywhere between an hour and never ending, more or less. But people will live stream for kind of 8 hours. Our #1 live streamer on Douyin is a woman called Mia. She does 8 hours on a Saturday, 8 hours on a Sunday. It's incredible that she has a voice at the end of it, because she's speaking more or less non-stop for the whole time. She's very, very good at it. But anyway, I'll just go back just to highlight one other thing about this. So as people join the live stream, you get a little message that says so-and-so has joined, that's coming up in the feed. People can also send particular messages. So you've got customers asking questions. What really powerful about having our own in-house live streamer is we can do quite intense customer service and really explain the products in great depth. But a lot of the time, it's just people commenting, oh, you look so great. That product looks really cool. Can you do it cheaper? Most common comments. So it's, it's a really powerful way of doing it. You can also see here, there was a little reminder there that at 8 o'clock, a different product is going on. Do you want to add it to your diary so you get a push notification when that product goes live? Okay, Austin Lee is on the Tmall ecosystem. If you've not heard of him, he is also known as the Lipstick King. Famously in China, he sold 15,000 lipsticks in 30 seconds or something like that. It was like absolutely mad. He's been very popular for a very, very long time. He's had a couple of mishaps recently. He got banned for 3 months from live streaming last year for saying something politically insensitive, and then he basically called one of his followers poor more recently in a live stream, which went down really well, as I'm sure you can imagine. But in the grand scheme of things, he's got tens of millions of followers. He can sell hundreds of millions of RMB of products. His target for Double 11 this year, so Double 11 is a big, big deal for Austin Lee, is to sell 2 billion RMB, which is about 250 million pounds of products over the course of that period, which isn't bad. So his company will be getting 25% of that. He's probably getting half of that directly. So Austin Lee, very, very wealthy man. As I said, live streamers, the best paid people in the world. So you can see here, just before this, so I've not shown you the whole thing because it's about 10 minutes, but just before this, we had one of his assistants doing the full face mask as well. He's got a little team that work with him so that he's got people to bounce off and can explain to him. It's a bit more professional than ours, obviously, because they're in a full studio. They've got multiple cameras, multiple areas. He's selling this mask. He's giving some little GWP with it as well. You can see the link is live here So the sale price is 599 RMB, which is about £70. And the number of comments is obviously much higher than was happening on the other one because he's got a lot more people watching him, so just a constant feed of people asking questions and saying things. You also start to see the sales figure that crops up. Oh, I'm running out of time. I've been yabbering on. Yeah, you see the sales figure, so it builds a sense of desirability because everybody is buying it at the same time. And we sold about 1,600 units of that mask during this live stream. It was really successful. So I've been told to hurry up. We've done a lot of live streaming for Temple Spa this year. I'm just going to highlight here, this is the founder of Temple Spa, one of the founders, Mark, on a live stream that we did from their headquarters. He was very popular with the fans. I won't go into the other channels, but I will just quickly talk about who we are. So we represent some really cool beauty brands, luxury, premium, some mass market beauty brands as well. We work with people like Revolution Beauty, and we're really specialist in incubating brands and taking them into the market. We do that slightly differently, so we've got a different approach to most people operating in the Chinese market of how we get from A to B. That is all underpinned by our dual headquarters and our expertise within the industry. If you want any more info, please email. I've also got business cards. Come up and have a chat at the end. And thanks so much for listening.